Hey, it's Snake, and this is an ordinary deck of playing cards. Ah, perfect. Not a bad hand if I do say so myself. But if you want something a little higher end than these regular old bicycles, this is a slightly more expensive deck of Monarchs by Theory 11. Damn it. Okay, so that was my hand for that one. Now, for most purposes, this is really all you need. But I feel like there's still something missing. What if you want to be able to make music with these cards? Which is a totally normal thing to wonder. I don't know what you're talking about. Enter the Book of Chances. We're going to have a lot to talk about with this one. So, this is the Book of Chances, a deck of designer playing cards by Andrew Huang. There's a bit of a backstory behind these. I knew that I wanted to get them as soon as they were first announced, but there was a bit of a problem with the original incarnation of this deck of playing cards. And that was that the artwork on the previous version of the Book of Chances utilized AI-generated images, which, being an artist, you can probably already guess how I feel about AI. I talked about that on a previous episode of Snake Stories. So, sales of the previous version of the Book of Chances were pulled. I canceled my order for that previous version. Those who still wanted them got theirs, but all of the proceeds were donated to a charity organization for music. Overall, I think it was really well handled on Andrew's part. But I was still curious because Andrew did announce that later on they would be shipping a version of the Book of Chances that did not utilize AI for its artwork. But we had no idea when that was going to happen. I did ask Andrew on Twitter one time, and I believe he gave an estimate, but I've forgotten what that is since then, and I no longer use Twitter anymore. But the Book of Chances is now here once again. Unfortunately, after they shipped, the window to order them closed, so you cannot get these anymore. However, I think it is implied on the website that there will be a future production run of these where orders for them will open up again, and it'll be the same deck of cards that I've got here. So I will keep a link in the description if you want to be on the lookout for that. But this is it. The Book of Chances, created by Andrew Huang, artwork by Tormius, and additional design by Scott Cares. And if we open up the box, you can see that is what the back face of the cards in the Book of Chances looks like. And I will say right out of the box, these are really nice feeling cards. I can understand part of where the premium for the price comes from. If you stack them up and get them perfectly aligned, they have this really nice polychrome looking edge, and each card looks like plastic, feels like plastic, and I honestly kind of hope that it is plastic. Because while cards like the bicycles and the Monarchs are made of cardstock, those are better for like playing card games or doing cardistry with them. I feel like plastic would add a lot more durability and longevity to these cards for the purposes that they are designed for. So I have no way of really knowing what these cards are actually made of, and I don't want to test it in a way that can risk damaging them, but I really hope these are plastic because that would just add more to the premium feel behind them. Now, the idea behind these cards does have a bit of musical history behind it, and that musical history traces back to composer John Cage and his usage of chance operations. Most people know John Cage as the guy who did this, but John Cage was the pioneer of some other lesser-known compositional techniques that still hold a basis in modern music today. One of those techniques was the usage of something called chance operations. John Cage in particular really liked this book called The I Ching, which roughly translates in English to the Book of Changes. And that's probably where the name The Book of Chances came from for this deck of playing cards. To put it simply, chance operations are the act of allowing randomness to guide the music. The artist surrenders themselves to factors that are completely out of their control, and then using those inputs that nature has given to them, they then use their own skills as a musician to translate those inputs into a musical output. The way John Cage approached the usage of chance operations was often very abstract, but you can also leverage this idea of randomness for more melodic purposes as well. And that is what Andrew Huang's Book of Chances really plays into. Now, if we take a look at each playing card, it comes with not only the traditional rank and suit that you would associate with a normal playing card, but it has a bunch of other features that can be used to guide your music. If I can hold this up at the right angle and get my webcam in focus, each playing card also features a rhythm on the bottom. These represent the 4 16th notes that occupy a single beat, or they can represent 4 beats in a measure of common time. It's really up to your interpretation. It also has one of the 12 notes of the chromatic scale. This ace of spades has an A on it, but if we turn over to a different card, this 5 of spades has C sharp or D flat. On the top in the upper right corner, we have a chord quality. For the 52 standard cards in this deck, that chord quality is always going to be either major or minor, but the deck also comes with 3 jokers, and those jokers have diminished or augmented on them. So you can shuffle these into the deck, and they will give you a little more opportunities to mix things up a little bit. The card also has a scale degree in the top right. This ace of spades has the first scale degree, but if we turned it over to a different one, this 4 of hearts has the 4th on it, and so on. So each card has all of the scale degrees from 1 to 7. And finally, each card also features a piece of abstract artwork and a creative prompt. For example, this ace of spades says, "Make the most beautiful choice." All of these different features are meant to guide your music making process if you ever find yourself in a place where you're stuck, or if you want to lay a foundation and then use your own imagination to expand that into a fuller musical idea. And I haven't even taken advantage of the full range of features that this deck of playing cards has to offer yet. In those 3 musical demos that you heard in the beginning, I was mainly using the chromatic notes, the chord qualities, and the scale degrees. But I think that's a good segue into how we can actually use these cards to make some music. For that first song that you heard, I knew that I wanted to make a sort of serialistic techno style thing. There's this one series of YouTube shorts that I watch where the guy basically uses musical cryptograms to make these funky, atonal, serialistic techno riffs, which happens in a lot of techno, but I like it. It sounds good. So what I did was I took the Book of Chances, and first I took the jokers out, because as you can see in the lower left, the joker just has a note with an atonal note head. I mean, maybe you could use that for something on your own, but for the specific purposes of what I was doing, this didn't really help that much. And that's another thing. You can take cards out and put them in depending on what you want to do. If you want to generate an idea that adheres to a certain diatonic scale, you can just take out all of the non-scale notes, shuffle the remaining cards, and then draw from them. Although that might take a while because you have to leaf through them and try and get everything in order. But regardless, for that techno loop, I also took all of the kings out, because the chromatic note on the kings also isn't a note at all either. It's kind of hard to see because I don't want to have to readjust the focus on my webcam, but this is a quarter rest, which I did make use of for the 3rd demo, but we're not there yet. So, with the 3 jokers and the 4 kings taken out, I shuffled the remaining cards back together, like so, and then I proceeded to draw 16 of them. And those 16 turned out to be the ones that you saw in the very beginning of this video. The notes that I drew to shape that techno loop were F sharp, G, C, D sharp, G, A, D, G, F sharp, B, A sharp, A, B, G sharp, F. Now, that sounds like a total hodgepodge of random notes, but the great thing about making a techno loop is you can offset that string of notes by various different octaves, and with all those leaps, it gives it a little more of a sort of rhythmic coherence, and that's how you got something that sounded like this. And from that point, all I needed to do was add some drums and a bass line. For the second demo, I shuffled all the cards back together, and then drew 6 of them and used the scale degrees in the upper right. To that end, I ended up with 6, 3, 7, 5, 7, 2. And then I made the next measure just hammer on the tonic note to establish that the song was going to be in the key of G. And then when the lead section came in, I made the upper voice play that same bass line, and then I added some counterpoint in the bottom voice where stuff would go in different directions. Maybe I'll do a lesson on using counterpoints to enrich two-part harmonies at some other point on this channel. And then for the final demo, I shuffled the cards once again, drew 8 of them, and looked at both the chromatic note in the lower left and the chord quality in the upper right. And from there, I just extended all of those chords into 7th chords. So that resulted in a chord progression of F major 7, G sharp major 7, A sharp minor 7, F sharp minor 7, G sharp minor 7, B major 7, and then from that point, I had drawn a king with the quarter rest in the lower left. And I simply interpreted that to mean stay on the previous chord for the next measure. So the next chord was another B major 7. And that's what I mean by allowing randomness to guide the music. The way John Cage used chance operations was he didn't allow randomness to fully dictate the music. He simply took what the I Ching showed to him and used his own imagination and his own compositional skills to interpret it. So really, that quarter rest could have meant anything. For all I know, it could have meant make everything go completely silent for the next measure. But I decided to take it to mean stay on that previous chord. And finally, for the 8th card, I drew F sharp major. And once again, feeding into that idea of allowing randomness to guide the music and using your own creative imagination, I realized that F sharp major is a chord only a half step above the F major at the very beginning of this chord progression that the Book of Chances helped me generate. So I changed that F sharp major to an F sharp 7, and now when the chord progression is looped from the end back to the beginning, it's a tritone substitution that resolves downward nicely by a half step. And I've only scratched the surface of what you can do with this deck of playing cards. I haven't even used the rhythms on the bottom yet, nor the creative prompts on the top, nor the abstract artworks on the back. Every single card in this deck has a unique piece of abstract artwork which is supposed to inspire the music that you want to make. So if you're having trouble getting ideas for a new song, you can just look at this image and think about how it speaks to you musically. Maybe it'll take a while to figure something out, or maybe you just can't. But in that case, you would just draw a new card, look at the image, and see what it says to you. What melody does this image invoke? What chords do you think could fit? That sort of thing. Now, I know there are probably some people out there who are going to be asking, why make this sort of thing, and why should I care? I could easily just create a program that randomly generates a list of chords, or a list of scale degrees, or a list of rhythms, or something like that. And yes, that is very true. You don't need to spend the $33 to get the Book of Chances if you want to do that. You can just write some sort of script in Python. And I'm sure there are random generators of chord progressions and stuff like that online. I don't know, enter a list into random.org. But the value I see in something like the Book of Chances is, rather than just clicking a button on your mouse or tapping a button on your phone, the Book of Chances provides something tactile that you can actually hold in your hand, interact with as a set. I'm not doing a very good job because I am just fumbling everything. But interacting with something physical like this really gets the creative juices flowing in a way that a lot of digital things don't really do quite as well. It's kind of one of those things where how well you understand it is affected by how seriously you take music as an art form. And that's also why John Cage used a physical copy of the I Ching. When you open the book to a certain page, or however you do it, I actually don't own a copy of the I Ching, so I wouldn't know entirely how it works, but you are physically interacting with something in a way that most digital experiences cannot replicate. And that's why I think the Book of Chances is so important. I truthfully don't think I would have been able to come up with the 3 songs that I wrote in the beginning without this deck of cards to tell me, like, hey, you can just lay these out like this, and there we go. In the lower left, that's another techno loop right there. I could just plug that into the same project file if I wanted to change it up and extend it. Yeah, I might extend those into full songs now. And that's the beauty of this deck of playing cards. It's something that you can just reach for, give it a good shuffle, and then see where fate leads you. So I really like this thing. And like I said, there's a lot of potential in it that I still have yet to tap into myself for my own music. But this is something that I will definitely be keeping on my person and keeping around. If I start picking up music production live streams again, you might actually see me use this thing to get new ideas for me to produce. And yeah, I think it just provides inspiration in a unique dimension that is very often lost on us in the 21st century, where you are able to physically interact with something instead of just looking to a screen for answers. And with a total of 55 cards, I don't see myself running out of ways to get ideas from this thing anytime soon. It'll be here for me when I need it, and if I ever find myself in a creative dry spell, I can just grab a card, read the prompt, look at the artwork, pick the note from the chromatic scale in the bottom left, and do a multitude of other things with it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Andrew Huang's Book of Chances. Let me know if you also bought this deck of cards and what you've been able to do with it if you use it to make music. Again, these were a limited production run, so you cannot buy them at this time of recording, but I will leave a link in the description because it is implied on the website that they will eventually do another production run of these, and you will again be able to order them when that happens. In fact, because I can see myself using these a lot, I probably will order a second deck when that opens up, just to have on standby and to replace this one if it gets lost or damaged or whatever. But yeah, that'll be about it for this video. Once again, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, everyone. I will talk to you all later.